Messenger by Lois Lowry, Chapter 13. Such a swaggering, brash little boy he had been, with no father and only an impoverished, embittered mother to try to make a life for children she had not wanted and did not love. Matty had turned to a life of small crimes and spirited mischief. Most of his time had been spent with a ragtag band of dirty-faced boys who carried out whatever schemes they could to survive. The harshness of his home place led him to thievery and deceit. Had he been grown, he would have been imprisoned, or worse. But there had always been a gentle side to Matty, even when he had disguised it. He had loved his dog, a mongrel he had found injured and had nursed back to health, and he had come, eventually, to love the crippled girl called Kira, who had never known her father, and whose mother had died suddenly and left her alone. Mascot, Kira had called him, laughing. Sidekick. She had made him wash, taught him manners, and told him stories. "I be the fiercest of the fierce," he had bragged to her once. "You are the dirtiest of the dirty faces," she had said, laughing in reply, and given him the first bath he ever had. He had struggled and protested, but in truth had loved the feel of warm water. He had never learned to love soap, though Kira gave him some for his own, but he felt the years of grime slip from him and knew that he could turn into something cleaner, better. Roaming, as he always had, Matty had learned the intricate paths of forest. One day he had found his way to village for the first time and had met the blind man there. "She lives?" the blind man had asked him, unbelieving. "My daughter is alive?" It was very dangerous for the blind man to return. Those who had tried to kill him, who had left him for dead years before, thought they had succeeded. They would have slain him instantly had he found his way back. But Matty, a master of stealth, had brought him secretly at night to meet his daughter for the first time. He watched from a corner of the room as Kira recognized the broken stone that Seer wore as an amulet, and matched it to her own, fitting it into the fragment given to her by her dying mother. Matty saw the blind man touch his daughter's face, to learn her, and he watched in silence as they mourned Kira's mother together, their hearts connected by the loss. Then, when darkness came the next night, he had led the blind man back again, but Kira would not come, not then. "Some day," she had told Matty and her father, when they begged her to return with them to village. "I'll come some day. There's time still, and I have things to do here first." "I suppose there's a young man," the blind man had said to Matty as they traveled back without her. "She's the age for it." "Nah," Matty had said scornfully. "Not Kira. She has better stuff on her mind. Anyways," he had added, referring to her twisted leg, "she has that horrid gimp. No one can marry if'n they got a gimp. She's lucky they didn't feed her to the beasts. They wanted to. They only kept her 'cause she could do things they needed." "What things?" "She grows flowers and—" "Her mother did too." "Yes, her mum taught her, and to make the colors from them." "Dyes?" "Yes, she dyes the threads, and then she makes pictures from them. No one else can do it. She has like a magic touch, they say, and they want her for that." She would be honored in village, not only for her talent, but for her twisted leg. "Turn here." Matty took the blind man's arm and guided him to the right side of a turning in the path. "Watch the roots there." He noticed that a root lifted itself and stabbed slightly at the man's sandaled foot. It made him very nervous, guiding on this return trip, because he could feel, being familiar with it, that Forrest was giving small warnings to the blind man. He would not be allowed to come through again. "She'll come when she's ready," he reassured Kira's father. "And till then, I'll go back and forth between." But it had been 2 years since he had last seen Kira. Matty emerged from Forrest with a stumble, blinking at the sudden sunshine, for he had been in the dim thickness of trees for many days now, and felt that he had almost forgotten light. He fell on the path and sat there panting, slightly dizzy, with Frolic pawing worriedly at his leg. In the past he had always, what would the word be? Strolled from Forrest, sometimes whistling. But this was different. He felt that he had been expelled, chewed up and spat out. When he looked back toward the trees in the direction he had come, it seemed inhospitable, unwelcoming, locked down. He knew he would have to re-enter Forest and return by those same dark paths that now seemed so ominous. He would have to lead Kira through to the safety of her future with her father, and he knew suddenly that it would be his last journey in that place. There was not much time left, and he would not be able to linger here, to look up his boyhood pals, to reminisce with them about their pranks, or to brag a little about his status now. He usually did that when he came. He would not even have time to say goodbye to the stranger his brother had become. Village would close in 3 weeks from the time of the proclamation. Matty had calculated very carefully. He had counted the days of his journey, adding in extra days it took for his side trips to tack the messages in place. Now he had just enough time to rest, which he badly needed to do, collect food for the return journey, and persuade Kira to come with him. If they moved steadily and without interruption through forest, though he knew it would be slower with the girl, who had to lean on her stick, they would arrive in time. Matty blinked, took a deep breath, got to his feet, and hurried on to the small cottage around the next turning, the place where Kira lived. The gardens were larger than he remembered. Since his last visit, almost 2 years before, she had expanded them, he saw. Thick clumps of yellow and deep pink flowers fringed the edge of the small dwelling, with its hand-hewn beams and thatched roof. Matty had never paid attention to the names of flowers. Boys generally disdained such things, but now he wished he knew them, so that he could tell Jean. Frolic went to the base of a wooden post that was entwined with a purple-blossomed vine and lifted his leg to proclaim his presence and authority here. The door to the cottage opened and Kira appeared there. She was wearing a blue dress, and her long dark hair was tied back with a matching ribbon. "Matty!" she cried in delight. He grinned at her. "And you've got yourself a new pup. I hoped you would. You were so sad, I remember, after Branchy died. His name is Frolic, and I'm afraid he's watering your clematis. It's all right," she said, laughing. She reached for Matty and embraced him. Ordinarily uncomfortable with hugs, he would have stiffened his shoulders and drawn back. But now, from exhaustion and affection, he held Kira, and to his own amazement, felt his eyes fill with tears. He blinked them back. "All right, stand back now and let me see you," she said. "Are you taller yet than I am?" He stood back grinning, and saw that they were eye to eye. "Soon you will be, and your voice is almost a man's." "I can read Shakespeare," he told her, swaggering. "Ha, so can I," she said. And he knew then for certain how changed this village was, for in the earlier days girls had not been allowed to learn. "Oh, Matty, I remember when you were such a tiny thing, and so wild." "The fiercest of the fierce," he reminded her, and she smiled fondly at him. "You must be very tired, and hungry. You've just made such a long journey. Come inside. I have soup on the fire, and I want news of my father." He followed her into the familiar cottage and waited while she reached for her walking stick that leaned against a wall and arranged it under her right arm. Dragging the useless leg, she took a thick earthen bowl from a shelf and went to the fire, where a large pot simmered and smelled of herbs and vegetables. Matty looked around. No wonder she had not wanted to leave this place. From the sturdy ceiling beams dangled the countless dried herbs and plants from which she made her dyes. Shelves on the wall were bright with rolls of yarn and thread arranged by color, white and palest yellow at one end, gradually deepening into blues and purples, and then browns and grays at the other. On a threaded loom in the corner between two windows, a half-finished weaving pictured an intricate landscape of mountains, and he could see that she was now working on the sky and had woven in some feathery clouds of pink-tinged white. She set the bowl of steaming soup on the table in front of Matty, then went to the sink to pump water into a bowl for Frolic. "Now, tell me of father," she asked. "He's well?" "He's fine. He sends you his love." He watched as Kira leaned her stick against the sink and knelt with difficulty to place the bowl on the floor. Then she called to Frolic, who was industriously chewing a broom in the corner. When the puppy had come to her and turned his attention to the bowl of water, Kira rose again, sliced a thick piece from a loaf of bread, wedged her stick under her shoulder again, and brought the bread to the table. Matty watched the way she walked, and the way she had always walked. Her right foot twisted inward, pulling the entire leg with it. The leg had not grown as the other had. It was shorter, turned, and useless. He thanked her and dipped one end of the slice of bread into his soup. "He's a sweet puppy, Matty." He half listened as she chattered cheerfully about the dog. His thoughts had turned to Frolic's birth and how close to death the pup and his mother had been. He glanced down at her twisted leg. How much more easily she would be able to walk, how much more steadily and quickly she would be able to travel, if the leg were straight, if the foot could be planted firmly on the ground. He remembered the afternoon after the puppy and his mother had been saved. Today he was tired, very tired from the long journey through forest, but on that day he had felt near death. He tried to recall how long it had taken him to recover. He had slept, he knew, yes. He remembered that he had slept for the afternoon, glad that the blind man had not been at home to ask why. But he had arisen before dinner, weary still, but able to hide it, to eat and talk as if nothing had happened. So his recovery had taken only a few hours, really. Still, it had been a puppy. Well, a puppy and its mother. 2 dogs. He had fixed, cured, saved 2 dogs in late morning and recovered from it by the end of the day. "Matty, you're not listening. You're half asleep." Kira's laughter was warm and sympathetic. "I'm sorry." He put the last bit of bread into his mouth and looked apologetically at her. You're both tired. Look at Frolic." He glanced over and saw the puppy, sound asleep, curled into a mound of undyed yarn heaped near the door, as if the soft pile were a mother to doze against. "I have work to do in the garden, Mattie. The coreopsis needs staking, and I've not had a chance to get to it. You lie down and get some rest now, while I'm outside. Later we can talk, and you can go into village and find your friends for a visit." He nodded and went to the couch to lie down on top of the knitted blanket that she had thrown across it. In his mind, he was counting the days they had left. He would explain to her that there was no time to visit with old pals. He watched, his eyes heavy with exhaustion, as she took his bowl to the sink, placed it there, and then, leaning on her stick, gathered some stakes from a shelf and a ball of twine. With her garden tools, she turned to go outside, the twisted foot dragging in its familiar way. He had known everything about Kira for so long. Her smile, her voice, her merry optimism, the amazing strength and skill of her hands, and the burden of her useless leg. "I must tell you this," Mattie thought before he slept. "I can fix you."